welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar, and what a show we have lined up for you this Monday evening. Fuel prices are on the boil once again, 22 hikes in the last 3 weeks, but the government's standing its ground. It's become a political issue, but nothing further than that. We're going to break down for you on the show today the details of the fuel economics. Also on the show, Mumbai and Maharashtra's lockdown has been extended to the 31st of July. What is the logic? What is the reasoning? And will things improve? I will be speaking with Dr. Shashank Joshi, who is a member of the Maharashtra government's COVID task force. We also have the biggest voices in the auto industry telling us how we can be an Atmanirbhar Bharat. But first, let's talk about the fuel prices. Fuel is on the boil. In Delhi today, diesel costs about 80 rupees a litre, out of which 50 rupees is taxes you pay to the government. That's not all. The crude prices right now have increased, but don't really justify the kind of increase in fuel prices that is payable at the retail level. It's become a political issue, with Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan responding to opposition parties, especially the Congress, saying that opposition-ruled states are hiking rates as well. Listen in.
आदरणीय श्रीमती सोनिया गांधी जी शायद ये भूल रही है, कांग्रेस शासित राज्य राजस्थान हो, पंजाब हो, महाराष्ट्र हो, झारखंड हो या पांडिचेरी हो, उन राज्यों ने भी पिछले 3 महीने में वहां की प्रजा के ऊपर राज्य सरकार की ओर से 5-5 रुपये टैक्स भी लगाई है। इन दिनों में जीएसटी की कलेक्शन एक अपने सबके सामने है, क्या स्थिति है, कारोबार में दोबारा धीरे धीरे वापसी हो रही है, वो समय लगेगा, उस कष्ट को स्वीकार करना पड़ेगा। हम उसको जिम्मेवारी के साथ संभालते हैं। और आखिर ये पैसा भारत सरकार ने इकट्ठा करके किया क्या? राज्य सरकारों को दिया अपने हिस्से के अंदर। इसलिए आपकी संस्कार तिजोरी को लूटना है। मोदी जी की योजना है तिजोरी को गरीबों के लिए, मध्यवर्गीयों के लिए, जनता के लिए खर्चा करना, बांटना।
देखिए, कच्चे तेल का दाम गिरता ही जा रहा है, ऑल टाइम लो है कच्चे तेल का दाम, मगर हिंदुस्तान में पेट्रोल और डीजल का दाम सबसे ऊंचा है। इसलिए हमने इनसे कहा है कि इसको एकदम कम कीजिए, गरीबों से, मध्यम वर्ग से आप पैसा लेना बंद कीजिए और रोल बैक एकदम कीजिए। तो आप मिलिए हमारे साथ, एक साथ अगर हम एक आवाज में बोलेंगे तो सरकार को बात समझ आएगी और पेट्रोल का दाम फिर से गिरेगा।
All right, so is this sort of gouging, price gouging, as one opposition leader has called it, justified at all? Can the government, without any clear sources of revenue, go to the low-hanging fruit, the easiest one, which is increase taxes on petrol and diesel prices? People can't avoid using it as the lockdown ends in a lot of places, and some kind of activity returns to normal. Demand has also gone up and people really have no other choice. To understand the dynamics of this, I am joined today by Saurabh Chandra, who's former Secretary of the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. I'm speaking with Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist at Care Ratings, and I'm also speaking with Sandip Sabharwal, Investment Advisor. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for talking with us today. Mr. Chandra, your take, till when will this go on? Till when this will go? Till when will this go on? Is the government now, and this is basically oil marketing companies which are increasing the prices, but we know how it actually works, where there is a sense that people will just have no other choice but to go in for this.
Tamanna, frankly, I am at a loss to understand this price rise which is being done by the oil marketing companies. What used to happen earlier, the price build-up was given on the website of the oil marketing companies. After the 16th of June, this price build-up is not being given. And it started from the price at which dealers have to buy, let's say, diesel. Now, before that, a lot of elements go into the price buildup. It starts with the Arab Gulf price of diesel, and then you add import charges, freight, and have something called a trade parity price, which has an element of 2 rupees of customs duty, which actually protects Indian refiners. On top of that, you add the oil marketing companies' margins and their marketing cost. Now, where exactly is this increase coming from? It is coming from the portion which is before the price at which dealers are buying diesel. So this 11 rupees is before that. Now, that needs to be explained. It never used to be done earlier, but I think it would only be fair if the oil marketing companies come out and explain where this price increase is coming from.
You know, the sad fact of the matter is oil marketing companies sometimes are seen as independent entities, and sometimes they are not. They are government owned at the end of the day. And in the middle of this sort of technical term is where the common man is hanging fire. So just to give you an example, the last time prices were at these levels in about October 2018, Brent crude was at 40. Was at $76 a barrel. Currently, it's at $40 a barrel. So there is no real justification. Madan Sabnavis, is it simply because governments, both state and center, are so heavily dependent on these taxes for revenue, and there's really nothing else happening right now because of COVID?
I would tend to agree that most of these hikes which we have seen in the excise duty and the state VAT is primarily on account of the fact that government revenues have suffered the most. If you actually just go back to the month of April when we had this lockdown, I think at that particular point of time, it was felt that it was a problem of the common man, that we had to sort of save our lives in order to get a livelihood, so on and so forth. But suddenly, I think in the month of May or so, it dawned on the government itself that the moment you have a lockdown and economic activity comes to an end, your own revenue suffers. And that's what we also saw when the April accounts of the central government came out, that there were very sharp falls in terms of GST collections, income tax, corporate tax, so on and so forth. And I think petrol and diesel are the two products which are out of the ambit of the GST, and there's a lot of discretion which is there for both the center and the states to keep increasing the taxes. And we should also remember that the consumption of petrol and diesel came down, because the moment I say that I cannot move out of my house, I cannot take my vehicle out. So there was limited transportation, the limited vehicles on the road, which also meant that consumption came down. So we had a situation where international price of crude came down, consumption came down. With the existing level of taxes, the government suffered because the revenue came down. So now as the prices started moving upwards, we've seen that the government has been increasing the taxes. Consumption maybe has recovered a little bit, but definitely it's not gone back to pre-COVID times. And we've seen that the fiscal is going to come under tremendous pressure. So I would tend to believe that these increases are more in order to support the deficits of both the center and the states rather than anything else.
What is the impact though? Sandip, if you can just give us some perspective. You know, this time, for a change, diesel prices are at par or higher than petrol. And, we have to look at it from the impact it has on everyone. This is not just an urban middle class kind of issue. Can you explain to us why this is so important?
Yeah, it's very important, Tamanna, because, the first response of the government when COVID crisis broke out and fuel prices cracked globally was to hike fuel prices. So if you remember in March, they hiked prices. Then there was a lull when crude kept on crashing, and then they increased the excise duties, and then they have effectively increased the prices again. So if you look at it from the perspective of what the consumers have lost out and calculate it on an annualized basis, it's around 6 lakh crores. So 6 lakh crores has been taken away by the government, which should potentially have come to the consumers while giving no real fiscal stimulus to the economy. All of us know that actual fiscal stimulus is between 1.5 to 2 lakh crores. So effectively, there's been a fiscal contraction where the government's taken out 4 lakh crores on an annualized basis. It's not a monthly. On an annualized basis, if these taxes persist, what should have come to the consumers has been taken away by the government. Now, the spiraling impact of specifically diesel prices is very significant. right from the farmer. The farmer uses tractors, he uses diesel to generate power when power supply is not there. As of us know that farms in India are supplied power at very odd times only, so they need to generate some power. So they have diesel gensets, they use fuel in tractors. So it starts from there, costs go up. Then from transportation, first level transportation, costs go up. Then at the second level transportation, when it goes from wholesalers to retailers, costs go up.
Yeah.
And so effectively, it's a cost spiral which is going to happen in the economy. So in where we are today, the government has been more focused on their revenue rather than trying to revive the economy without, I think, understanding that there's a numerator and denominator both in fiscal deficit calculations. So if the denominator, which is the GDP, gets destroyed, then in any case, your fiscal deficit is going to get expand in any case. So they are not focused on revival. They want to take away this money and somehow control the fiscal deficit. It's not going to happen. And the adverse impacts will be seen. We could, in India, be potentially staring at stagflation going forward.
You know, Madan, just give us some perspective on that. What is the kind of impact this is going to have on inflation and on consumer demand, which is anyway really dampened and repressed right now? I mean, in terms of economic policy, this seems like, grab all you can get kind of an attitude and a direction and strategy from the powers that be, instead of putting more money in the hands of consumers.
Actually, Tamanna, I have a slightly different view here because if we should remember that we are quite used to paying something like 80 rupees a litre for petrol. Diesel, of course, the first time it's crossed 80, which is a different issue. So to my mind, psychologically, I don't think it's as much as a blow as we're making it out to be right now. But in terms of inflation, I think we have two indices. One is the WPI, one is the CPI. If you look at the weightage of these two particular products in the WPI, it's maybe in the region of around 4.5%. And I think that's what's going to turn positive. Right now, if you look at fuel inflation, it's in the negative area. So that's going to be something which is positive. But does the WPI matter for us in terms of policy? The answer is probably not. So therefore, we're not going to be affected that much by it. If you look at the consumer price inflation, if you look at petrol and diesel, both direct and indirect, we're talking of something like 2.5% of index. So even in case we're talking of a 10% increase in these prices, it's not going to reflect that much on the consumer price index. So the indirect impact which we were talking of, yes, in terms of transportation costs going up, those kind of price costs getting into the prices of the final products, maybe after 6 months or 9 months, that's typically 2-3 quarters where there's...
So Madan Sabnavis, 1 minute, let me just stop you there and slow you down. So are you saying that these increases between 9 and 11 rupees that we have seen in the last 20 odd days does not really make a difference to the common man's pocket?
See, we should remember that the price when they came down, let's look at the price of petrol, for example. We were paying 80 for a very long time. It came down to 78, 76 to go towards 72, 73. Now it goes back towards 80. So if I look at it over a period of time, I don't think it comes as a shock to me to say that I'm paying 80 rupees a litre. I have paid it when the crude oil price was 80. So just remember, when I'm a consumer, I do not bother about what is the international price of crude. I know that I'm paying a certain price and I'm running my vehicles, so therefore I don't really get impacted. And most of the people who run vehicles probably can also afford it. Now, it's in a way you're right if you say that because I'm spending more on petrol, I'm going to spend less on other products. Well, theoretically it's right, but it doesn't really quite work out that way because we have not seen demand compression happening even when the price of crude was in the region of 80. That all of us cut down on our consumption and we ran into this spiral of saying demand was falling because the price of petrol and diesel went up in the market. So I'm just saying that what you're saying is perfectly right, but let's not exaggerate it to say that the economy is going to crash merely because the price has gone up by 9 or 11 rupees. That's one particular component. We should remember that the government is also making certain expenditures on their side, and they have to balance the revenue at the end of the day. It's very easy for us to say government should not do anything. At the same time, the fiscal deficit goes to, say, 15%. We will be sitting on this show and saying, why the hell is such a thing happening? So let's be balanced. I think the government is doing its best. They're not taking it to unreasonable levels. The prices are still something which, to my mind, are palatable. And I think as policymakers, there are trade-offs, and let's accept that the trade-offs it may not be happy for everyone. But I think for the general good, to make sure that everything is acceptable, I think increasing the prices is not a very bad idea.
Sandip, do you want to come back on that point? Is sort of the panic being exaggerated?
See, I think I do not agree with what Madan said at all. There is supposed to be free pricing of fuel in India. What happened to that free pricing? Have these companies become arms of the government that they are doing just what the government is telling them? And when we talk of demand not getting compressed in the past, when petrol reached 80 rupees, you have to remember at that time the economy was growing. This is a contracting economy. Jobs were being created. Today, jobs have got destroyed. Salaries were rising. Today, salaries have fallen. So there is a pocket of the consumers which you have to use to consume, and out of that you'll be using more and more money on petrol and diesel. So we can't argue that you're used to 80 rupees, that's why it should be 80 rupees. When crude is at $40 or $35, we should get that price here in India. So why are we not getting? And secondly, when we talk of competing with China, do people know what's the price of diesel in China? Diesel price in China is equivalent of 52 rupees a litre today. How do you compete in terms of logistic costs when you say we want to be Atmanirbhar with a country like China, where you are paying 60% more for transportation fuel than that country? Even in a country like the USA, diesel is now today on a comparative basis around 15% cheaper than in India, a developed country of that magnitude. So I think what the government is trying to do, obviously there is stress on the fisc, and that stress on the fisc is the only thing they are focused on. They are not focused on what will happen to growth. And so as growth will suffer, as the GDP contraction will become greater, then at some stage they'll realize that these strategies don't work, where you take more and more money out of the consumer's pocket, and then people are left with nothing. 60% of GDP is consumer demand, and that will just compress.
Okay, I want to just get Saurabh Chandra's view on this, and I want to talk about the point of transparency, because it's an important aspect of the whole premise as far as petrol and diesel pricing is concerned. It's supposed to be linked to what is happening in the international market, which is what we get to hear when the prices are in an upward trend. When the prices dropped, all of that extra cushion got sucked up by the government coffers. Now, as they are climbing, again, prices are climbing. So are they truly then linked? You've been in government, you've seen how that mechanism works, Mr. Chandra. Why isn't there then complete honesty and transparency? Just come and say that, when we need more cash, we're going to dip into your pocket. Just live with it.
I'd completely agree with you on the transparency part of it. The entire price buildup from the Arab Gulf diesel price to the consumer price should be on the website of the oil marketing companies. As I mentioned earlier, after the 16th of March, even the small portion that was being shown on the website is perhaps not being shown. The price hike after government increased the excise duty and the state governments increased the VAT, which is about 50 rupees at the moment in the price of 80 rupees, has come entirely from petroleum companies. Now, whether they are making up for the losses they suffered during the lockdown because of compressed volumes, or by keeping the prices constant, which they couldn't have because actually the prices were falling. So on the transparency bit, they have to come out clean. Now, every government actually decides on its policy options. This government has decided to tax petrol and diesel more or less at the same level. The UPA government subsidized diesel heavily, directly, and also by making the upstream oil companies subsidize it. Now, whether that is a good idea is again open for discussion. So they have chosen an option which means inflicting pain in the present rather than monetizing the deficit, which is an unknown pain in the future. The 2008 stimulus went on similar lines, and at the moment we are paying a fairly heavy price for it with all the rising NPAs and many other things. So what will happen in the future if the fiscal deficit reaches 15%, as is being suggested, is anybody's guess. I wouldn't like to dabble with an unknown. I would be happier to suffer a pain which is known and in the present.
Okay, Madan, I want to understand from you, and I think our viewers, because there's a lot of rhetoric which happens about petrol and diesel prices without real understanding. It often becomes a more political issue than anything else. But what does it mean when diesel costs more than petrol? Because not everyone who's utilizing this are people in their cars or, private vehicles who can, to whom that excess 8, 9, 10 rupees a litre is not pinching too much, like you described a little earlier. There is a cascading effect, isn't it?
In case diesel is higher than petrol, as what is the case today in Delhi, then definitely it would mean that your transportation costs go up. And at some point of time when your transportation costs go up, they get embedded in the prices of the commodities which are carried. And especially if you're looking in terms of agricultural products, so there's a possibility that your transportation costs, intermediation costs will finally go up, given the fact that there could be 3 or 4 layers of intermediation for most of the agricultural crops. So therefore, that will be a kind of an add-up which takes place, and we may end up at higher prices. But as I mentioned earlier, will probably take 2 or 3 quarters for it to build in, and it all depends upon whether to what proportion of your diesel increase in price is going to be passed on in terms of transportation costs. Because even in the past, we have seen that when the price goes up by X%, it doesn't mean that your index or even your transportation costs go up by X%. It's normally less than proportional. Yes, there will definitely be some kind of an upward pressure, and normally these kind of pressures are things once they get inbuilt, they never really go back. So once the freight rates go up, it's not likely that they will ever come down, even in case the price of diesel comes back to say 70, 75 rupees per litre. So I think that is a kind of a lingering threat which is there. But again, I would say we should not exaggerate it. It's not going to be adding that much to inflation to say that food prices are going to shoot up by 10% because the price of diesel has gone up by 10%. That kind of
sure. I'm talking about the context though, Madan, because we have to remember that this is a post corona, or we're actually in the middle of it with no clarity on where things are going to go. We're in the middle of extreme economic uncertainty. Things could look up, things could, we're facing a blind alley, honestly. And there have been a lot of people whose incomes have been badly hit. It just seems a little cruel. The timing of it seems a little cruel when anyway there's no massive relief for the common man.
Yeah, if you're saying from the point of view of somebody who doesn't have a job or is living on a lower salary, definitely they will get hurt because they will have to do a bit of substitution between the goods which they are consuming. So to that extent, there will definitely be hardship which will have to be borne by people. But again, to say that to what extent would it be so in case, let's assume that you have a budget of say 5,000 rupees, which you're spending on food items, will it go up from 5,000 to 5,500? The answer is probably not. Will it go up from 5,000 to 5,100? Maybe, possible, depending upon the kind of commodities which we are talking of. Because very often when we look at those manufactured products which go on the MRP basis, they are less likely to be influenced on account of these aberrations which take place. It's more likely to be your food grains, your vegetables and fruits, which would be showing an upward tendency. Yes, I'm not denying the fact that there won't be any kind of hurt for the common man, but it may not be very, very significant to say that the economy is going to be affected, the overall demand is going to get compressed. There will be a bit of substitution taking place at the margin, and yes, there are always people who are going to suffer. But we have to just say that from the point of view of the government, there are certain trade-offs which are being taken. You're giving somewhere a certain amount of money has been given to people in the form of cash transfers, so on and so forth. I'm not saying there have been any large amounts. Nobody can live on 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees a month. But then there is, of course, the other side, the negative side to it, where you will end up paying probably slightly higher prices.
Is there an upside? Is there an upside? Earlier in the show, we spoke about what is a limit, or what is the kind of hike which people can tolerate. I think that's a fairly subjective view. Mr. Chandra, do you have any figure in mind where people's patience will run out? Because right now it's more noise and photo ops, the kind of protest we're seeing. Most people just want to get on with their lives in any which way they can. Do you think there's an upper threshold that would be there in mind, or let's see where the crude prices go as well?
You see, we are all a part of the political economy. So there would be a threshold in mind. My guess is we are almost there. Maybe a rupee or two, but beyond that, because a conscious decision has been taken in Delhi, not other states, to equate petrol and diesel prices. So in rural areas, diesel prices are a sensitive issue. Now we are almost there. My reading is 80 odd rupees is just about the threshold. So I don't think it's going to go very much above this level.
Okay. Sandip, do you have any take on how high do you think the prices can go? And I know it depends on where the international crude prices go. But in terms of, the portion of that 1 litre cost that the government will gobble up as taxes?
Yeah, so they're already gobbling up most of it. So now what happens if crude prices tomorrow go to $50? It's a big possibility as winters approach and as the supply cuts play out. So I think that's something we need to see. So I think it's a short-sighted strategy, irrespective of what is being said, because when we were saying that if government gives a 5 lakh crores fiscal stimulus, it will be a great thing. Then when government takes out 5 lakh crores from the consumer's pocket, why is it not a negative? It works both ways, right? So if it was going to be a positive at 5 lakhs, then it's a negative at minus 5 lakhs. So I think the economic impact of that will be negative, and it will be seen over the next few months. Right now, there's a rebound demand playing out just because everything was closed for 3 months. So let's see. I think the repercussions of this will be negative on the economy overall. So as an overall economy, it's not negative because the government is absorbing the lower fuel prices. So overall, for the economy, it's neutral and beneficial because $40 we are buying from international markets.
Yes.
But from the economic growth perspective, it's a negative.
We're talking about the common man's pockets today, and sort of the cascading impact it has when a time when consumer demand is already subdued to this extent. We'll have to wait and see how long it goes. We've got a one-day break in the last 3 weeks as far as fuel prices and hikes are concerned. They resumed from today. And we'll just have to remind those that are listening that remember the story about the goose who laid the golden egg. Maybe there should be a limit to how much we can extract from the common man's pocket in these tough times. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the discussion tonight on the India Development Debate.